Hey everyone, it's Robin Riley for Bello's Designs. Welcome to my video tutorial. Today I'm going to create this card using the Sweet Poppy Thistle along with the Celtic star in the background. Before we get started though, I would like to first invite you to our Facebook groups. We have two of them, the Bello's Design Lounge, where we showcase everything Lavinia. Bello Design a la carte page is where we showcase everything else, such as Sweet Poppy products, cardio products, Nellies, and anything else Patty has in the shop. We are on other social media platforms such as Instagram, Pinterest, and TikTok. And all you have to do to find us is go to those apps and search the hashtag Bello's Designs. All right, let's get started with this card. So the supplies that I'm going to be using, first of all, I am using a white card, heavyweight, which measures 4¼ inch by 5¾ inch. This also weighs 300 GSM. GSM indicates how much water the card can hold. The higher the number, the more water. So I find 300 to be really good. It's not exactly as good as watercolor paper, but it's doggone close. So that's why I tend to use it. And the fact is, this is super smooth, where watercolor paper isn't always super smooth. So that will be the card topper. For the card base, I'll be using a same weight card with the measurements of 6 inch by 9 inch, and it's scored at the 4½ inch mark. And that topper will fit perfectly centered on the top of that card. The other items that we'll be using, I will be using the sentiment stamp. This one in full says happiness blooms from within, and it comes from the Sweet Poppy Daisies A5 stamp set. But as you can see, I'm only using the word bloom, and I'll show you how I get that. The other stamp that I'll be using will be the Sweet Poppy Thistle Stem Stamp DL Small. Okay, that's it for the stamps that I'll be using. As far as the inks go, for the background, I'll be using Distress Oxides in Speckled Egg and Mowed Lawn. As you can see, there is a knotted background, and the knots come from the Sweet Poppy Celtic Star stencil, and I will be focusing on just the center of the stencil to create that background. A few other items that will be needed. We will need some Sweet Poppy tape, possibly, if you're uncomfortable with doing a few of the things that I'm going to be doing. I'll show you and explain that as we go along. I will be stamping the Thistle in a combination of VersaFine Clair Morning Mist along with Oxide Speckled Egg. I will be using my Misty stamping tool, the adhesive Art Glitter Designer Dries Clear adhesive. You will need some sort of a water spray bottle. And something optional to create the faux frame, I used a silver Sharpie. Again, that's optional, and you can do that as you like. Okay, let's get started. Let me get everything removed here so that I can get all set up here. So what we're going to do is first create that background. Now, I hope everyone knows that the stencils that Sweet Poppy creates are made of metal. It's like a stainless metal. And typically, when using a Sweet Poppy stencil, you want to work on a magnetic sheet. But for this particular background, it's not needed. So I'm not going to be doing that. I'm going to just place this on my work surface. And coming in with the Distress ink in Speckled Egg, I'm going to just tap some ink, mainly focusing on the center of this card, or center of this stencil, excuse me. I'm going to spritz it with water, just a few light spritzes, And using my card topper, I'm going to do what Eileen Godwin calls the dip and dab method, where I'm going to, you'll see me turning up the sides of the card because I really don't want to get any of those points, to be honest. I'm really trying to just focus on the center to get that knotted area. And I'm just going to dip and dab areas of this card into the ink, getting random bits and pieces. So I'm going to continue to do that with the blue. And as you can see, I'm getting some decent coverage and I'm seeing some of the knots. And that is my goal. I just want to see a little bit of the knot. Now there's still ink on there, so I can spray again and continue doing the dip and dab method and picking up some of that pattern. Now on occasion you'll get a blob of ink, and that's fine. That's really not a problem at all. Just kind of adds to the interest. Okay, I'm pretty happy with that background. So what I'm going to do is just come in with a damp towel and carefully mop up some of that excess ink, because I don't want to create mud by mixing the green in. I'm even going to wipe the background down a little bit. And, you know, depending on the temperature, where you're at, the humidity level and whatnot, your card might dry super quick. For me today, there's a little humidity in the air, so I'm going to do a quick blast of the heat tool. All right, that's quick enough. Now what I want to do is bring in that mowed lawn, and I'm going to repeat the same process. I'm just going to spread some of that ink, mainly in the center, spritz again with the water, and using that dip and dab method, I'm going to go in and just pick up a little bit of ink at a time. Now there's no way I can replicate the card exactly as I did before. It all depends. You know, it looks like I was much heavier handed today with my ink pad than I was with the original, but that's okay. I think you'll understand the gist of this as I go on. So what I'm doing is I'm just looking to see where I would like to add a little more green to my card. So let me just pick up a tad bit more here and there and get some of that knotted pattern. Working with distress oxides on these metal stencils is really nice. Knowing that this ink is water reactive, it's very easy to clean this by just dropping it into a sink or a tub of water. And if you can't get to it right away, that's okay because it's water reactive. So as soon as you add water to it, you'll be able to clean it very, very easily. All right, let me give this a blast of my heat tool. Okay, now I want to compare the original with this just to show you before I stamp on it the difference a few days make. Okay, something that I made a few days ago here is on the left, and this is the one we're making today. So once again, there's no possible way to create an exact duplicate of this. As you can see, I was very light-handed, and I used a whole lot more ink to get a very lighter shade of green. But I think the process is speaking for itself. All right, let's move on to the actual stamping. So to do so, I am going to be using my Misty. Let me get myself set up here so that you can see well. And I'm going to place this in the corner just to keep it where I want it. I'm going to bring in that beautiful Thistle stem stamp. And I'm going to place it on a slight angle. Now, being that this is a darker background than my original, I may have to stamp this several times so that I can see this image better. And believe it or not, this is bizarre how I do this and how it came out, but I was like really happy with it. The first thing I did is I started with, let me get this corner held down. As I said earlier, it's a little humid here today, so things are sticking a tad bit. So what I'm going to do is I am going to stamp up with the speckled egg. And I'm going to just place that over that stamp, press it into place. Now, it's not going to be real bright. All right, number one, speckled egg is not a bright color. Number two, it's an oxide, so it's not going to stamp with real precision. And as you can see, I hope, it's barely visible. I'm going to do it again. This is the second time. Stamping right over top of the first image. And then this time around, I'm going to put a layer of ink and I'm going to spritz it with water, hoping to get a little bit of a watercolor effect. And it's okay if it kind of spreads out under the stamp. That would make it even more interesting. But as you can see, it did spread a lot of that ink, made it a little more visible. So that is the look that I was going for. Let me wipe off my stamp. And when cleaning your stamps, all you need is plain water, a nice microfiber towel, something that's lint-free, and it's that simple. Now, don't remove the stamp. I want you to leave that in place. Now, typically, I would just let this sit here and dry on its own. But for the sake of the video, I'm going to do a quick blast of the heat. Place it back in the corner where I had it so that I know it's going to be aligned just about perfectly. And this time I am going to use the VersaFine Clair in Morning Mist. And I'm going to ink up that stamp. And being that I have not removed it, it will stamp directly on top of the previous ones. So I should get a little bit of an outline, which I do. I don't know how well you can see, but the watercolor effect is coming through under the flower. And I'm just going to leave it at that. Okay, let me clean this off quickly. And we're going to move on to the actual sentiment. Now, the sentiment itself is large. It has a lot of words to it. I'm looking for my card to show you exactly what it looks like when it's stamped out. Happiness blooms from within. But I just want to use the word bloom. That's it, nothing else. So first, what I want to do is I'm going to align this where I should be able to see it. And you know, my original, I set it down here, but I don't like the looks of it there because my flower is on a little bit more of an angle than the original. So I'm going to place it near the top. So the grid lines on this paper sheet will help me align this so that it is pretty close to being straight. I'm going to place my magnets in place to hold my card still. And pick that up. Now what I'm going to do is use the Sweet Poppy tape at this point. Some people like to stamp the image and then carefully wipe off the areas that they don't want. I don't always have luck with that, so this is how I like to do it. I will take the Sweet Poppy tape and tape over the words that I don't need. And this will hold long enough for me to get the ink on. I also do not want that letter S, so I'm going to block the S. And I'm also going to block the letters that are beneath. Okay, now once I have that, pretty well stuck down, what I'm going to do is come in with my Morning Mist. And I'm going to tap that all over the word several times. Now, my Morning Mist is getting dry. That's the reason I'm having to tap so many times. So if yours is definitely newer, wetter, you only need a few taps. But I want this to work the very first time I do this. So once that's done, I'm going to remove the tape. Look at those letters to make sure I didn't get ink on anything. Remove it with my nail if I do. And stamp. I'm going to hold this on a little longer, being that the card is a little bit damp. I'm pressing very, very hard to get that to appear. Now, I don't want this to be a sentiment that's in your face. I do want it to be somewhat lighter. Main reason, I wanted the grays to coordinate. And I just kind of like the way this looked. To me, it was just much softer. So there it is. That's exactly what I wanted to see. Let me clean this off and get this out of the way. I'll show you up close. There's that word bloom. I see no evidence of any other letters from that stamp. So my taping was pretty good, I must admit. Okay, the last step for this card, or I guess I should say the next to the last step, is to create the faux frame. I'm using scrap pieces of card from our packagings. And I'm using a silver Sharpie for this. I don't have a gray one, but this does appear gray. It's not very metallic. And what I like to do is I take the extra sheet here, place it on the top, leaving about 1/8 of an inch on the edge of the left-hand side. And I simply take the marker and run it down the edge of the paper. Now this, again, is not going to be a standout, pop-in-your-face thing. It's going to be very slight. I rotate the card. Again, the trick to this method is to keep even weight pressed using your right hand so that neither paper can slide. And you drag your pen down the entire edge. One movement without stopping. Rotate. Place your card. Press firmly. Another trick is to always keep your eye on the tip of the pen and follow it to the very end. If you take your eye off of the tip of the pen, especially when you're learning to do this, your pen will have the, ask me how I know, your pen will sometimes skip and jump into the card, and then you've got this random piece and it ruins your card. So just follow these rules initially until you become more confident in creating the faux backgrounds. Once that is created, I hope you can see that slight edge that is on. You bring in your card base. Remember, it's 6 by 9, folded in half, scored at the 4.5 inch mark. And then this is added to the card. So let me get that step done. When I apply my glue, I try to stay in about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. This has a fine tip so that you don't get great big globs. If by chance you get a glob like I did there, I just kind of drag it into the center. This way, when I apply this to my card base, it's not going to ooze out. So I'm going to try to line this up and get it the very first time down. And there you go. That's how easy it is to create a background using a sweet poppy stencil. So think of the ones you may have, and you could do partials like I did, partials of the star to get the knots, and then use a beautiful stamp to finish it along with the sentiment. So let's look again at the original and the one I did today. And as I said, no two can ever be the same, depending on how heavy-handed you are or not, or how much water you add or you don't. You will get a different outlook each time. But that's the fun of it, right? Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you give this a try. And if you do so, please post your make on the Bello's a la carte page so that we all can see what you've done. Once again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.